Today, we will be taking a look at how to install Arch Linux. First the easy way, and then the normal way. Before we get into it, I want to thank you all for 100 subscribers. This is a huge milestone, and I couldn't have done it without your support. I appreciate each and every one of you. That being said, let's get into it. Go to archlinux.org, and in the corner, click Download, and then scroll down to Checksums. Below Checksums, you should see Worldwide, and click the link below that. Now choose the ISO link below the 2 dots and Arch, so Arch Linux 2023. And now wait for that to download. While that downloads, go to etcher.balena.io and click Download Etcher. Now choose the version for the operating system you're currently using, in my case Linux. And now wait for it to download. Okay, now open Etcher. And now choose Flash from File and choose the ISO. Now select the USB drive and then click Flash. In my case, I don't have to do this as I'll be using a virtual machine. So in that case, open your VM and make a new VM. Okay, now create. In your case, just use the boot key to get to the boot menu on your computer. It varies between which computer you use. And then choose Arch Linux. You may have to make it the default choice in BIOS or UEFI. Then click Enter when you get to the Arch Grub boot screen. You have now successfully booted into Arch. To install Arch the easy way, you need to type arch install, and this installer requires the arrow keys to navigate. The language is correct for me, so go to Mirrors, enter Mirror Region, choose your country, and use Tab to select. Then go back. And then go to Disk Configuration. Just hit Enter. And then select /dev/SDA for you. For me, since I'm in a virtual machine, /dev/VDA. Choose ButterFS or ext4. In our case, we'll use ButterFS. Yes. Also yes. And now, we don't need swap unless we have a really old computer, so set this to no. Then, you can set a root password, but in our case, we're just going to make a user account with administrative privileges. So, go to user account, add a user, enter a username, then enter a password, In this case, we will give it super user since we're not making a root account. Now confirm and exit. And select profile. Select type. You can choose desktop, minimal, or server, but we're going to do desktop. You can choose any desktop environment you want, but here we're going to choose GNOME. Hit enter. And now we can go back. For audio, you can just select Pipewire. Then for additional packages, you can add any you want. In our case, we'll add NeoFetch and Firefox. They are space separated. Now you need to configure the internet, so go there, go down and use Network Manager. Now go to install, hit enter, and this part of the installation should take about 5 minutes, so see you in 5 minutes. When it asks you if you want to root into the newly created installation and perform post-installation configuration, you can just select no, and then type reboot. And now when your system reboots, you will be entered into your desktop environment. Select your account and type your password. Now you can go to settings. And select a more desirable resolution. We'll do 1920 by 1080. And you have successfully installed Arch. I just realized that I misspelt my username, but it's not really a problem. Now go to console. Type NeoFetch. And there you go. You've just installed Arch. To install Arch the, quote, normal way, first you want to see if you have UEFI or BIOS. So to do so, type cat/sys/firmware/EFI, then /fw_platform_size, and then hit enter. So if it returns 64 or 32, you have a 64-bit or 32-bit UEFI system, but if it returns no such file or directory, you have BIOS. Now, if you have UEFI, stick till the end of the video, because some things in the installation need to be done differently with UEFI, but for now, we'll just do BIOS. So, the first thing you'll want to do is connect to the internet. Since I'm using a virtual machine, I don't need to do this because I already have internet through the VM, but for you, you would type iwctl, then type device list, and for me, these commands won't work, but here, this should give you a list of Wi-Fi devices. So then type station, the name of your device, so I'll just type my-device, but you would put the name of your Wi-Fi device, and then type scan. Then, after you type that, type station, again the name of your device, get-networks. And this should give you a list of networks. So then you would type station, the name of your device one more time, then connect, and then the name of the Wi-Fi network you want to connect to. So I'll just type as an example, my Wi-Fi. And then it'll either connect, or if it requires a password, it will prompt you for the password. But to make sure that you're connected, you can type ping and then any website. So I'll just type duckduckgo.com. Well, first we have to get out of the IWCTL interface, so type exit, and then type ping duckduckgo.com. And now it should ping, and if it pings, then you do have internet. In our case, of course, since we're in a VM, we do. So we can just use Control-C or Command-C on a Mac to get out of this. And now, the next thing we want to do is set the time. So just type time, date, CTL, then set-NTP, and then true. And now what you want to do is start to partition. So type lsblk. And here, for you, you'll probably see SDA if you're on a real computer, but since I'm on a virtual machine, I see VDA, and that's the drive we want to partition. So type cfdisk /dev/VDA. And if you are in a BIOS system, well, if you have over 2 terabytes of storage and you're in UEFI or both, use GPT, but otherwise use DOS. Since we're in BIOS and we have under 2 terabytes of storage, we're going to use DOS. And now make sure new is selected and then hit enter. And now this will be our boot partition, so we'll enter 128 megabytes because that's about all GNU Grub needs. But if you're using a heavier boot manager, then you may want to give it at maximum 512 megabytes. So in this case, just 128. Then select primary, and then type B. And now you want to go down with the arrow keys to free space, new again, give it the rest of your space. Again, select primary, and now use your side arrow keys to navigate to right. Type yes. And now go to quit. And now you want to make the file systems. So type mkfs.ext4, because we're going to use the ext4 file system, /dev/VDA1. And now we're going to repeat this, but for VDA2. Okay, now that that is done, we want to type mount/dev/VDA2/MNT, and then we want to type mkdir/MNT/boot, and then we want to type mount dev/dev/VDA1/MNT/boot. Okay, now that that is done, you want to install some of the core software and the Linux kernel. So to do that, type pacstrap, and then base devel Linux firmware, and then nano, because we're going to need to do some text editing later. So we actually need to type pacstrap/MNT. Sorry. Now we hit enter. And this part of the installation should take about 5 minutes or so. So see you in 5 minutes. Now that everything has installed, we want to create an fstab file which lists all available disk partitions. So to do this, type gen fstab -U /mnt 2 arrows /mnt /etc /fstab, and now hit enter. And now that that is done, we want to switch root from our USB drive to our actual installation. So to do this, type arch root /mnt /bin /bash. Okay, and now you see that the prompt color has changed. So that's how you know that we're in our actual installation. And now we need to install Network Manager so that we can graphically configure internet. And we also need to install Grub so that our system can boot. So to do so, type pacman -s Network Manager and Grub. And now hit enter. Type Y. And this should take a few seconds to install. It's finished. So now what we want to do is we want to type systemctl enable Network Manager with capital N and M so that our system can have internet when we boot without us having to manually enable it. And now we need to configure Grub by typing grub-install /dev /VDA, not VDA1 or VDA2, just VDA, or in your case SDA, so that it installs for the entire drive. This should take around a minute or a few, so. Okay, now that it has finished, we want to generate our Grub configuration file. So type grub-mkconfig -o /boot, right, /grub/grub.cfg. Hit enter. Okay, now that that has finished, we want to set up our locale. So type nano /etc /locale.gen. Okay, now use the arrow keys to go down to your locale. In my case, it's NUS. So you want to uncomment ISO, so NUS ISO, and also .utf8. So I'll uncomment those two for your locale. And now type Command O to save, enter, and Command X to exit. And now what we need to do next is type locale-gen to generate our locale. Okay, now that that is done, we need to define our language in locale.conf. So type nano /etc /locale.conf. And now type lang, so lang, all caps, equals your locale, so in my case n-us, and then .utf-8, and again Control O to save, enter, and Control X to exit. And now what we need to do is we need to set up our hostname. So you can do so by typing nano /etc/hostname. And you can type whatever you want here, but in my case, Arch Linux works, so I'll just type Arch Linux. Save that. And now what we need to do is we need to type a password to set up custom passwords. So type passwd. Make your new password. Okay. Now that that is finished, we need to exit out of the trooted environment. So just type exit. And now we need to unmount everything with umount /r/mnt. And now that that is done, we can reboot our system. Okay. Now you have successfully installed Arch Linux. The username is root. And then type your password. And now we are in. Now that we have installed Arch Linux, we want a graphical environment. So to install one, we're going to be installing GNOME, but you can install any one you want. You also need a display server. Now GDM and GNOME automatically install this for us, but if you're not using GNOME, or you're using another desktop environment, or you're not using any desktop environment, you could type pacman-s Wayland. But in this case, so like this. But in this case, since GNOME already installs that for us, we'll just type pacman-s GDM GNOME. And then we also want to add NeoFetch and Firefox. And just hit enter, enter again, enter again, enter again, enter again. Type Y. And now this part of the installation should also take a few minutes, so just wait a few minutes. Now that everything has successfully installed, we need to type systemctl enable gdm.service so that GNOME will launch automatically without us having to manually launch it. And now you can reboot your system. If everything goes as planned, congratulations, you have successfully installed Arch the hard way. Now you'll notice that GNOME is asking you for your username. This is the first and only time GNOME will ask for your username. So type root, then type your password. Okay. And now you can go to settings. Set a desired screen resolution. In our case again, 1920 by 1080. And now you can go to console. Type NeoFetch. Screenshot this, show it to all your friends, and now you can tell them that you use Arch, by the way. If you're in UEFI and you've gotten to the point where you found your drive, in my case, dev/VDA, and you've typed cfdisk/dev/VDA, or in your case, /SDA, you've gotten to the point where now it asks if you want GPT or DOS. Now, if you're in UEFI, you will want to type GPT, so type GPT. And now, we have to partition. So, select new, and this time, instead of giving it 128 megabytes of storage, you want to give the boot partition 512 megabytes of storage, so type 512 M, enter. And now, what you want to do is, before you go to the rest of the free space and make the root partition, you want to first go to type with the arrow keys, and now you want to go all the way up and choose EFI system. Now that you've done that, you can go down to free space and make it like you would normally. Then write the changes, say yes, and now quit. And another change is when you make the file systems, type mkfs.fat, because you'll want to, instead of making the boot partition ext4 or the EFI partition, you want to make it FAT32. So type mkfs.fat capital F space 32 /dev /VDA1. Now that you've done that, you want to make the root partition ext4 like normal. So ext4 /dev /VDA2. Okay, now that that is done, you want to mount the partitions. So type mount /dev /VDA2 /MNT. And here's another change. Instead of making the directory mkdir /MNT /boot, you want to type mkdir-p to make a parent directory /MNT /boot /EFI, and now hit enter. And now you want to mount dev VDA1 to /MNT /boot /EFI, and the rest of the installation is normal. You packstrap and do the rest like you would normally, until you get to the point where you install pacman-s network manager and grub. Over here, you want to make sure to also add EFI boot mgr. And now, from here on, type Y, and from here onwards, everything is installed normally, so just do everything like you would have in the previous installation guide. Like this video and subscribe so that you don't miss our awesome Linux and tech videos, and join the PenguinByte Discord community with the link in the description below. Thanks for watching, see you next time.